thank you very much for joining. This is our second Rec Talks. Our first one was only a couple of hours ago. We are joined by the fabulous AfewGoodTacos. He's going to talk to us about building social experiences in Rec Room. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few things. One, please don't disrupt the presentation. If you want to do that, just leave now, because anyone who jumps on the stage or anything like that, I'm going to be immediately kicking. And if it's obvious you were intentionally trying to disrupt it, I will report you as well. So don't ruin the experience for everyone else. We are streaming this right now, and at the end of Taco's presentation, we will have the opportunity for anyone who has questions to ask them, both here in the room and on the Twitch chat. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Tacos a few questions just to get the ball rolling. First off, how long have you been playing Rec Room?
I have been playing Rec Room since, I don't know, when did Rec Room come out? 2016? 2015?
2016, I think.
Whenever Rec Room came out, that's when I started playing. I've been around a while.
Wow, okay. You predate me on here. So when creating came out, because that obviously wasn't a thing when you first joined, so
yeah,
that was a development came later. How soon did you get into it afterwards, and what inspired you to start playing with it?
Yeah, so I didn't start building immediately. I actually was more of a quester and playing like paintball. Paintball was like a big thing for me, and then laser tag was a really big thing for me for a bit. And I didn't really get into building until some people started building like outside of maps, specifically like the what is it? I think it's like the charades arena or something, or the charades stage or something like that. Like, there you go, performance hall. So someone built outside of that map, and you had to like, I don't know, some of you who've been here for a little while, like you have to like get up to the wall and then like do this little thing, and like kind of phase through the wall and stuff like that. And that was the only way for you to actually get into this room, was to actually phase through the wall of the actual built game to go to this player created one. And it just felt meta and cool and like really off the beaten path. And that's what really got me started with building, is like, I want to do something like this. I had such an awesome, impactful experience from that. I want to try and see if I could do that myself as well.
Awesome. So when you're building in Rec Room, what kind of challenges do you have, both either Rec Room challenges, personal challenges? What kind of things have you come across, and how have you overcome them?
So I think anyone who builds in Rec Room probably can really relate to this, is ink. Man, I can't get enough ink. There's not enough ink in Rec Room for me to just build everything I want. So the biggest things that I have to overcome are the ink limitations, and so that kind of forces me to be very practical, even a little bit clever at times, and try to like consolidate things, learn better ways of setting things to environmental versus decorational, and vice versa, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And the last question I have for you is, of all the creations, of all the inventions, everything you've made, which one would you say you're the proudest of, and why?
Oh, that's a toss-up. Like, I really love the fireworks from Taco Cove. I'm really happy with those. Those are pretty awesome. But I think my most favorite thing I've ever built was, and I'm a part of the creator of that room, but it's not me actually listed as the room. But if some of you guys remember Magic Academy, the spellcasting game where you can actually like summon, spell and things like that. So I did all the circuitry for it, the majority of the circuitry for the spellcasting for that. And that's what I'm the most proud of, because it's something that like you literally have never seen anywhere else in really most of VR. Like, there's like one Magic game in VR, but that kind of does something like that. But like, to do it inside of a game is pretty awesome. So and that one required a lot of time. I actually drew out diagrams of circuitry and stuff like that, trying to figure out like, how do I make all this functionality happen so that it feels good without like taking up all the ink in the room to do it.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for right now. Like I said to everyone earlier, and I'll just repeat myself here. After the presentation's over, you'll have the opportunity to ask your own questions. And if you're watching via the Twitch stream, you can also add them to the Twitch chat, and I will read them to Tacos when that time comes around. But I think right now, just go and get started on your presentation.
Okay,
All right,
sounds
I'll
good.
go raise the curtain.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. This is so cool. I think what's amazing is that I'm currently standing in like my office in my room, at home. But I'm still a little nervous and a little stage fright just looking at everyone here because I know each one of you are also real individual people. So it has the same effect. And I think that's a really crazy thing about VR is the fact that we can have very visceral, real experiences, even though we could be hundreds, thousands of miles apart, separated by massive terrain, water, everything. And that's kind of what my talk is going to be a little bit about. So my talk is going to be about my experiences building social VR, experiences in Rec Room, and kind of sharing some of the insights I've gotten from that, and some thoughts around why maybe they're doing as well as they are, and then things to consider when you go to build your own rooms, because I think this can be applied to anything, not just a hangout room, but a PvP room or a questing room or anything else like that. All right, so I'm actually going to pull up some notes in front of me. You won't be able to see them, but I will. And hopefully the illusion that I am a good orator will be held intact. So let me switch over here. Okay, so right, so why don't I give myself a quick intro here. So I'm AfewGoodTacos, and in my day-to-day job, I am a user experience designer, and I work specifically in augmented reality and virtual reality. So real quick, why don't I just kind of explain like what my job role is. So a UX designer is someone who designs products that are useful, easy to use, and delightful to interact with. We're deeply empathetic of users, and we try to craft experiences that are relatable and intuitive to a wide range of personalities and thought processes. UX is an umbrella term, really. It's a term for a lot of different smaller roles. This can be anything from a visual designer to an architect, to a UI designer, to an interior designer, to motion designers. All these designers are all crafting delightful experiences and allowing users to do things efficiently. When I build in Rec Room, I approach it with empathy for others who are similarly in isolated bubbles trying to make connections with each other. So we approach VR with a lot of subconscious expectations. We found that in VR, in the industry, when I say we, I'm talking about the VR industry at large, that it's very easy to trick our brains into believing that the virtual world is just like the physical. It turns out all you need to do is strap a display to your eyes, and then make sure that your virtual world moves relatively about the same one-to-one movement as your head. And that's it. Like your brain just kind of clicks over and just accepts it as practically reality. It's like you just stepped into another room. And so this is great, but it also brings with it some expectations of how the world behaves, which VR doesn't always replicate one-to-one. So, for example, movement is very different in VR than in reality, and I think we all know this. So while you see the world move around you as your virtual self walks, your brain expects that you're standing still because you aren't moving your legs. So these two signals conflict and trigger a negative feeling. With enough constant negative stimuli, your brain may react as though you might have poisoned yourself and trigger your body to purge itself. And thus we have motion sickness. So depending on how tolerant you are of this constant disconnect between your body and your vision will determine how long you actually stay in VR. Okay, so why do I bring this up? So because it's a great demonstration of how we have a subconscious understanding of the world and how we bring that expectation with us into VR. So these are things that we never think about, but they manifest themselves in VR in varying degrees of discomfort. Right. Okay. So where was I? Blah blah blah. Manifest themselves in VR. Yes. So think about how you instinctively pull back when a person in VR gets suddenly way too close to your face, and you know why? Like, there's no one that's actually there, but the feeling is still there because it's largely based on your vision, and VR is emulating the real world to a degree that our brain. So we importantly as evolution has designed. So how does this relate to building social experiences? So now that we have an understanding of the subconscious expectation that we bring into VR, we can start to identify the things that make us feel comfortable in the real world, and then those in
Your mic's cutting
important
out.
experience. Oh, it's cutting out. I'm sorry. Test, 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 test.
That's better.
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry about that. What was there a part that you guys maybe didn't hear or missed? I'm
I'd
talking
say
to
just,
you, drummer.
yeah, just go over the last couple sentences. This last little bit.
Okay. So it kind of. Okay. So how to build this? Now that we have a subconscious understanding of subconscious expectations, we can start to identify things that make us feel comfortable in the real world, and then figure out ways to address those needs in VR, with the goal of making a more immersive experience for users to enjoy. So three things come to mind that I want to kind of highlight here. One is shelter. The second is comfort, and the third is community. And I'm going to go through each one of those. So at a very deep, primal level, we all look for shelter from the elements. This is no exception in VR. No one is really comfortable in a vast, open, empty space, whether that's an empty default Maker Pen room or a large landscape that someone has built. Deep level, you want to look for shelter. You're looking for an enclosure that would protect you from the elements and keep you safe from predators. And it seems kind of silly to think about this in VR, and yet almost everything built in VR is a structure of some kind that we end up inhabiting. And I think there's something to that. Now, after shelter comes comfort. A cave checks the box for shelter, yes, but a house provides comfort. The Maker Pen room is an enclosed space, yes, but it lacks details. It feels empty, sterile, and plain. Have you ever noticed that if you delete one of the walls first when you're building, you suddenly feel just a little bit better? Have you noticed that some of the most popular rooms tend to have a lot of details to them that emulate real-world details? I mean, why do we make furniture in the first place? Why do we put a pillow on a sofa? So there's a lot of these details here, and the reason is because they create a sense of comfort. They add interest to the environment. And lastly, the third point I was talking about was community. If you've ever been to a party, you'll notice that we tend to congregate naturally. We tend to gather in areas where others are. And a perfect example of this is when you whenever you go to a party, inevitably we are always in the kitchen. For whatever reason, we are all drawn to the kitchen. I think that's because, there's food there. And usually when there's food, there's also people there. We are social creatures. Even us introverts don't want to be engaged with people, want to at least be near people. And I think deep down, that's a very primal need for community and how important that is. So, with those 3 points in mind, I want to talk a little bit about my experiences building in Rec Room. So I took photos in the 3 of my top performing rooms to show some of the examples of things I've been talking about here today. So behind me, I have pictures from Taco Bayou. I think I've got the Taco Cove in the center here, and I've got the Taco Winter Lodge over here on the left. So just taking a look at these real quick. They're very different from each other. They're very vast, but they all share very common principles to them. I've built natural environments, and then I've provided shelter in those environments. In that shelter, I've added layers of details to provide the comfort, and within that environment, I've created areas that feel natural to gather in. For example, a living room or a kitchen in terms of the lodge here, or a tent or a bonfire in the case of Cove, or even a floating raft or a treehouse in the case of the bayou here. finally get to advance these. So here's some other examples here. This is from the bio here. So we have some areas here down by the water. I have some floating rafts here. But then if you go and make it up through the trees here, then we've got this tree house up at the top here. And again, all these feel safe and comfortable, and kind of make you feel like you're part of something, that you're protected from the elements in some way. Although I will say down here at the lower level, this is a bit more chaotic, whereas when you're up in the treehouse, it's a bit more calming and a little bit more isolating even. But to each their own. Some people prefer being up very high. Some people prefer being a lot lower. And I'll talk on that a little bit later. Here's some more examples here. So I've got the Winter Lodge here. This is the inside of the living room. And you'll notice that there's actually 3 different layers going to the Winter Lodge here. Out the window, way off in the distance, is the snowbanks and the frozen pond. And then in the lodge itself is the living room and the fireplace. And then one step above that is the loft. And from this one vantage point, you're seeing at least 3 different levels of elevation change. And I'll be talking a little bit later about how elevation also kind of emotionally impacts us and makes how it changes how we feel. Similarly, I also have other areas around the Winter Lodge, like this hot tub here. Again, making comfortable and inviting spaces that allow people to naturally come together as groups and to be together. Oh yeah, and then the cove as well, the bonfire here, and then also the tent I built. Again, playing with elevation. I actually took a tent, I split it into a loft because I can't help myself. I want to have a 2-level tent. Here's some other vantage points here. This is one from the frozen lake bed and their perspective looking back up to the lodge. And same thing, the lodge here, and their perspective back down to everyone enjoying themselves and at the frozen lake bed. So one thing I think most of us don't consider a lot is architecture and how important it is to the experience. Architecture has an ability to create an emotional response in us. Scale is a big contributor of this. Towering walls can make you feel small, while elevated areas can make you feel powerful and safe as you look down upon your environment. You'll notice that I play a lot with elevation in my rooms, and each one of these each has its own levels of elevation, from where you start to where you end up. Even in the gathering areas, there's different elevations for these different gathering areas. Examples of this are like the lodge up on the snowy mountain, but then once you're in the lodge, the floor is the new lowest level, so there's a loft inside that lodge, so you can get your a change in elevation from that perspective, and so on. Now, I think it's important to also point out that I think, at least from my perspective here, I think what makes my rooms successful is that they're engaging for different types of personalities. They're not just environments just to chat in. Depending on your age or your personality, just chatting could seem really boring or even intimidating. Having other activities in your room helps to keep the attention of those who don't want to talk, or maybe are too shy, don't actually want to talk just yet. Having these smaller little distractions or ways to kind of break the ice and help people to get into more natural conversation with each other is really important. Remember that we have a wide spectrum of people playing this game. So some are very introverted, others are super outgoing, and then there's the hybrids that start out very shy and then become more comfortable and emboldened to be more energetic once they feel more comfortable in their environment. So just having something small and simple, not as like, a gimmick of the room, but something as to help facilitate people coming together, I think is really important. So a couple examples are things like in the Cove, I have the fireworks. They're fun by themselves, but you can also launch them off with a group of people, but you don't need to have a group to go and launch fireworks. You can go to this and make it a very solitary experience, or you can have people join you. The lodge is another good example. It has a lot of interactive elements to it, from the whiteboard that you can see here, to snowballs, to ice skating, to hanging out in the hot tub, to opening up a present and driving an RC car. I mean, there's a lot of different things in there, but it all adds to an experience, and that helps start communications with each other. Let's see here. What's my next slide here? Oh, good. Perfect. So this is a top-down view of
You're cutting out. Yeah, you're cutting out again.
Weird. Okay. Let's see if I can fix that. Okay. Mic check. Check, check, check. How is that?
Sounds good.
Is that a lot better? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes it's every now and then it's like Rec Room wanting attention. Okay, so this is a top-down view of the Winter Lodge. And so I don't know if you can recognize here, but this is where everyone starts in the Winter Lodge. So this is the snowy bank that you started out in. And then you see the trees here that kind of dot the hillsides here, and then you're presented with the bridge. And then you see the lodge out here in the center. And this is kind of the focal point here. It's up high in the elevation. You start off very low. It gives you a sense of perspective of where you might want to go in the world. But then as you make that journey across, you kind of stop around here, so and you notice that there's the frozen lake bed over here. And so you are presented with multiple options of ways that you could go in the room. And the way that I design a lot of my rooms is to try and give you an idea of what you could do in the room as soon as possible, so that you can start making a decision of how you want to go and explore the room. So a starting area is very important for kind of setting this experience up initially. Let's see, what else was I going to say about that? Right, okay, so within each room, I try to design with an intent to recycle entertainment wherever possible. So what I mean by this is, in the case of the Winter Lodge here, let's say you have people playing with the snowballs and skating on the pond. But up in the lodge, the people in there get to observe the people down by the lake having fun. Alternatively, the people that are at the lake can see those up in the lodge relaxing by the fire. Similarly, let's see if I can switch this over here. Yep. Beep. So here's a top-down view of the Taco Cove as well. Again, you got your starting area here where you start out in the trees out here. This one's a little bit different. You start up very high. This is actually the highest point you can be in the map. And this gives you a nice overview of what's potentially possible. You can see from here, there's the fire pit over there, and you've also got the tent over there, and then you've also got this like darker, more mysterious area. And so just from that one cliff there, you can get an overview of what could potentially be something you might want to do. And then as you make your journey down the hillside, you start to come in contact with people, and then what people are doing, and start doing. So I'm
You're cutting out again.
Get people. Okay, check, check, check. Is that all right?
Yep, can hear you now.
Yeah, getting better. Okay. So what I mean by recycling entertainment is, I'm trying to get people who are enjoying themselves become people watching entertainment for someone else across the way. So a lot of my rooms are built in a way where you can see across from one vantage point to another. And the cove in particular is really nice because let's say you're over in the tent over here, or if you're over by the fire, and then you notice that someone has lit off a firecracker down here. And the firecracker has this like giant explosion to it that's like constantly flickering lights everywhere. It's a really eye-catching thing. And so let's say you're a new user or a new person that's just come into this room before. You may not know about this area yet, but you'll definitely know about it once you see those fireworks going off. And you might be intrigued to actually cross over the beach and come down and then try a different part of the map that you might not have discovered before. So this is what I mean by trying to, have different groups plan of playing on each other. Very similar to the lodge as well. It's like you're in the lodge, you have a vantage point down to the people playing and ice skating, and then people who are ice skating have advantage of the people relaxing in the lodge. A lot of kind of trying to cross over and trying to share in each other's company and enjoyment as well. And then, so this is my last point I want to make is don't forget about the music. So music is really critical to an experience. And we don't really think about this, but music helps us give a subconscious cue to how we're supposed to respond to something. And this is very well demonstrated when you watch a movie. When you're watching a movie, you don't notice music. You just notice its effect on you. You know when you're supposed to cry. You know when it's supposed to be a funny scene because the music plays out in a way that elicits that kind of interaction from you. And the same can be said for when you're designing your room. You want to find music that sets the tone properly. And so for things like the Winter Lodge, I chose nostalgic Christmas music because I felt like that reminded me of my childhood, that reminded me of past days of Christmas. And then alternatively, you have the Taco Cove here, where I chose much more somber, introspective music. And then there's also a track in there that's a bit more uplifting as well, just encouraging. And that kind of, for me at least, makes me feel like a harkening back to better times of the summer, times when I was having a lot of fun. And it just kind of helps to reinforce the mood that you should be feeling in that room. In addition to, you know, what you're observing with like the neon sunset and the dark blue tones and purples and scene as well. So that would be my last point, is just don't forget about the music. Don't forget about the shelter and the comfort and the community of your rec room. And I think with that, I think I'm all done.
That was a great presentation.
It's
Thank you
weird
very
because I
much,
can't hear anything, but I see people responding, and that's great.
So
this is now a good time. I'm going to start opening up for so start thinking about, like, if you've ever had any questions about building in Rec Room. I can answer anything about ink or some circuitry stuff. I can answer questions about working together as a team, you know, or you know, anything like that. Like, sky's the limit. So take a moment, try and think about what you want to ask, and then drummer will go through here and see if anyone has any questions, and we'll just kind of open up for a little Q&A here.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, okay. I'm not going to do that. I thought I'd turn it up a little bit so we could hear people, but someone.
You want to check live stream, see if there's any questions there yet?
We haven't had any questions on the live stream. I've had that up the whole time. But
I can't hear you, by the way. I don't know if you're talking.
I'm on push to talk. That would be really handy to hold down the button while I'm doing that. I didn't want to interrupt if I had to say something. The stream could hear me just fine, but no one else could. All right. If anyone here has any questions, raise your hand. I'll have a mic I can bring to you. Okay, we have Shauna Gator over here, I see. And behind them is Forever Summer Sky, so they'll be next. So here you go. Take that.
Nope.
All right. Let's see here. 1 second. We can't hear you yet.
I can't seem to hear her at all.
Yeah, I know. I think they had this problem in the last room too. 1 second. Try it now. Try talking. No, it's still nothing. Try dropping it and picking it back up. Let's see here. Okay, try taking it here again. Try taking it again. Let's see if it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still on push to talk. You guys can't hear me. Try taking it again. Let's try it again. I think I changed the setting. So try again. No, it's still not working. It's still not getting it. 1 second. I gotta find out why this isn't working all of a sudden.
It's funny because, like, so Shauna Gator is my wife. She's asking a question, and I can actually hear her downstairs. But I want to make sure that I can actually hear her in game so that everyone else can actually ask a question.
Where'd the mic go?
Okay, so the question is, where do I get my visual inspirations from? And that is a very good question. Thank you to my wife for asking me that question. Primarily, I do a lot of Google searching. It's a lot of, I have an idea of a memory that I want to relive or want to recreate. And so I start figuring out the mood and the tone for that. So something like Taco Cove, for example, I needed to get a bunch of inspiration for sunset beaches. I need to see things about bonfires and parties on beaches. I want to see reference of trees that would be on the beach here. I want to know what does it look like to have a yurt on a beach, which would be like a tent or something like that, or a teepee or anything like and just pulling together all these resources, picking all these things out from Google image search, and just kind of putting together, in design terms, we call these a mood board or a style board. So we put all these things together and we just kind of lay them out and we just assess them as one holistic thing. And this starts to help ideas come about. We start looking at, well, I like this and I like the design of that. I think we can combine the two together to make something unique out of that. And so that's how I approach all my rooms, is I come up with an idea, I look for inspiration for it, and then I start to build a idea of what I want to execute out of that based on all the reference that I've taken from all the inspiration I've been searching for.
All right, Forever Summer
Jeremy,
Sky.
you want to try?
Yeah, let's see if she can, if it's working for her.
I'm not hearing her.
No, the rolls are just not working in the room for some reason.
Still,
okay.
Oh, there it was.
Oh, wait, I heard it.
Oh, there.
Yeah,
Is it
it's working now.
Yeah,
Yes,
I can
it
hear
is.
you.
All right,
Awesome.
sweet.
Yes.
I just had to drop and pick up a bunch, so keep trying if you're not getting it the first time, maybe.
Okay.
So I noticed most of your rooms, Tacos, have like 2 to 3 congregation spaces. Do you think there's like a magic ratio of like intended population to congregation spots? And what would you say that is roughly?
That is such a good question. I actually didn't really notice it until I started building this presentation. I started taking top-down photos of my rooms, and I noticed that just about all of them have a triangular design to them. So weird. It's like, here's your starting location, here's another location, here's another one. That's a triangle, right? And I don't know, this could be just nature playing itself out. There is some like organized chaos to the world. And this can actually be mathematically computed as well. So it's very possible that like through organization and chaos, there's some kind of harmony that comes together and naturally, bubbles up in this way. I wish I had a smarter or better answer to that question, but yeah, it seems to be, it's more of just my own gut feeling, and it happens to just kind of work out that way. So take that for what you will, but thanks for the question.
All right, Kevin Spacey had a question.
First of all, I'd like to say I love your rooms, but
Oh, thank you.
What would you say a good balance between, you said shelter, of intimidating built structure and a homey structure? Like, what would you say a good?
So okay,
good
so
ratio
if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're saying, like, what if you want to have like more intimidating structures and more comfortable in structures? So like, are you thinking maybe like a horror map of sorts, or just kind of like you just want to see like a balance of the two?
Oh, sorry. What I meant to say is, how would you make a more intimidating structure compared to what are the differences between them? So you'd know.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. So, so yes, like I definitely talk about comfort, but you can also flip that on its head. So you can definitely make things very uncomfortable. There's two different kinds of uncomfortable. There's VR uncomfortable, which makes you sick and vomit, but then there's also uncomfortable as in I'm scared, or I'm lonely, or I feel lost. These are all different kinds of inverse, comfort. So I would say if you want to try to find the balance in that, usually things that are comfortable are softer, rounded, smoothed out, and things that you want to be more intimidating are sharper, hard angles. Usually scale is involved. The larger you make an object, the more intimidating it becomes, and it makes you feel smaller. It has an emotional response where you actually feel like you have less power. So a good example in video games is usually all the final bosses are like 60 feet tall. They're giant monstrosities that are like clambering around and stuff like that and like swiping anything. And that's because their scale and their size makes you feel very intimidated and powerless. And it provides a lot of challenge because it gets into your brain. It starts to really affect your own perceptions and it makes you doubt yourself. So you can use scale to your advantage in that regard. So I would say if you're going for more of an uncomfortable or scary kind of a feeling, or you want to make something that shouldn't feel comfortable in that way, use more angular, sharp pieces, darker tones, and then if you wanted something that's a little bit lighter and happier and more comfortable, round the corners off things, lighter tonalities. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay, we have a Twitch question. I want to.
Oh, Twitch question.
Quick.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
What have been some of the toughest things to build in your rooms, or maybe things that weren't as straightforward to build as you thought they'd be?
Oh man. Okay, so going back to Magic K Academy, that circuit for spellcasting was just so ridiculously complicated. Now I'm a designer at heart. I know some math, but I don't know a lot of math. And that was really my weakness in trying to approach the circuitry for all that and trying to build that out properly. And I had to ask a lot of much smarter people than myself through Discord and Rec Room in general, and have people show me how to like consolidate my coding to get my circuitry right, so that it would actually take up the least amount of space while still accomplishing the thing that I wanted it to do. So that was probably the most difficult thing compared to like the rockets, the fireworks in Taco Cove. Like light years of difference. Like it was so much easier to make the rockets than it was to make the circuitry for the spell casting.
Okay.
Thanks for that question on Twitch, by the way.
It's me. Kate has a question.
What inspired you to make all these good inventions and all these good builds?
Good question. So the question is, what inspired me to build a lot of these things? Part of it is just a deep need to want to build things in general. As an artist, I want to build things. I want to build experiences that others can enjoy. But I also want to kind of relive my own experiences. So a lot of them are based on real experiences I've had. I've actually been to a snow-covered loft building out in the mountains. I've actually been to a bonfire party, especially a lot in my college years. And I remember fondly going to Disneyland and going to the bayou there, the Blue Lagoon and the Pirates of the Caribbean. Thank you. So that's where all these inspirations come from.
S Surge, please go
All right,
back
got
to
another
the
question?
seats. Yeah, S Surge does, but she needs to go back to her seat.
I think she's fine right now.
Okay, here you go. Here's the mic.
Do you have a question, Serge? See if you can try grabbing the mic. They're on PC, so it might be a little difficult for them to grab it. I think it's like either E or F to grab. You might have to like drop it in front of her. There you go. Yeah. And then she can like look down and then grab it. You can also type it out too, and I'll read it here.
Yeah, maybe easier.
Yeah. Tell you what, why don't we let her?
Yeah.
Let's let her.
Has a
one back to you. Yeah.
Okay. There you go. All right.
Got it. Thank you. So, actually, real quick, she got it out just in time. Do you mind if I answer?
Yeah, go ahead. It's not working for him right now. Anyways, he needs to drop it and pick it back up again.
Drop and pick it up a few times. Yeah. Okay. So, Serge's question was, how did you visit places? So I'm not sure. Are you asking like how did I come to like visit these places in my real life, or it seems like you might be new to Rec Room, so maybe you're asking like how can you visit these rooms? I'm gonna go with that one. I'm gonna say that. So you can visit a lot of maker rooms. How did work for? I'm not fully understanding, unfortunately. But maybe I can try and explain a little bit. You can certainly visit these rooms in Rec Room through your watch in the live tab.
Try
You can
typing out the
also
question.
pick any one of these people, and you can view their rooms as well, and you can join them as well. And then as far as the inspiration for all these rooms, these are all just from my childhood memory. Yeah.
All right. Oh, anyone else have a question? Oh, I see one over here, green pixel. Okay, here you go.
What will be your next room?
Oh, okay.
Well,
Do you need my
if I
slide
answer that, that's not going to be any fun. I'll spoil the surprise. I will say though, the next room I'm going to build is actually not going to be a hangout room like these. I'm actually going to be branching out a little bit. I'm still debating if it's going to be a quest, or if it's going to be a story. I'm not sure yet. So it'll be a little bit different though, because I've been building social experiences, and now I kind of want to take that to another level in another area of rep. Most likely will be like quests or something like that.
All right, we have another Twitch question. Do you
Okay.
see any
then,
opportunities in creating VR experiences that facilitate friendships between those who would never otherwise talk in real life?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so if I understand the question, so how would you build rooms that would encourage people to interact with each other even if they can't talk? Is that a good way to summarize that?
I think it's what they're saying is like people who in general in real life would never have actually talked in real life, but in a VR space feel comfortable enough to talk to each other.
So how to encourage those people to actually get out there and talk to people in VR?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is trying to find those engaging small games and things in rooms that kind of break the ice a little bit. I think the whiteboard is a really good example of that, because everyone can just grab a marker and just start drawing something, and then you can notice what the next person is right next to you is drawing, and you might say something, and you might want to like ask them what they're doing, or something like that. It just kind of causes a moment of where two people will intersect each other in some way, and then you potentially a conversation that having people competing against each other or collaboratively working together on something, that's another good way of getting people to start talking to each other, because it doesn't feel so stood up as like, here you come here you come here, meet each other together. It's the classic like high school ball where like all the boys are on one side, all the girls are on the other, and dance, but then the DJ drops an awesome beat, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, and then you got that one crazy person that comes out there and just starts dancing, and then everyone's like, screw it, I'll get out there too, and then you just got everyone suddenly coming in and dancing together. So trying to encourage those few people who might be on the edge and might actually be able to sway others to start being more social as well is key. I'd say that's how I would approach it. Yeah. There's a question here from Ashley. She's been holding her hand for a little while. Can we ask her?
Okay. Yep. On it. Here you go.
Is it working? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
When it comes to building big rooms like you do, what is the first thing you start building on, either the landscape or the building itself?
That is a great question. I struggle with this a lot. I always go back and forth. Sometimes I start building out the landscape, and then the landscape dictates what kind of buildings I'll put in there. Other times I'm really fixated on building just the building, and then I start to figure out how the environment would be around it. I wish I had a better like definite answer to that, but it's very organic in nature. I will say though, I do tend to build at scale, which is a lot more difficult than like shrinking yourself down or like building at like really small scale and then like blowing it up really big. The reason why I build at scale, even though it's a lot harder, is because I can always immediately intuit what's happening in terms of the scale and the environment. There's never a time where I'm like building, I'm like, this is probably as big as much space as someone would need, and then blowing it up later and being like, oh, this is way too small, or whoa, it's way too big. At any point, I always know that it's always the right scale, because I can just stand here and I can look around and be like, yes, this feels good. That ceiling is a bit high here. I can lower that down a little bit. So as much as I enjoy the shrinking and expanding of self scaling and stuff like that, I actually don't use it a lot in my building. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that
Farron,
question.
you have a question. You want to try to use the mic again, see if it'll pick up this time? Try to pick it up. There we go. It's
I
working.
can hear something.
Yeah.
Yep, I got you.
Now
I can hear you.
me? Okay, nice. How much time did it took to create all your maps?
That's a great question. So I'll just point out these three that I've got up here. So the Bayou was, I'm inclined to say maybe 2 months, give or take. And these are not like every day I'm working like 12 hours on it. These are like off and on. So 2 months of like off and on work. Maybe like 2 or 3 days out of the week I'm working on it. Maybe a couple days on the weekends I'm working on it as well. The Bayou was one of the first ones that I built, though, and we didn't have as good of tools as we do now. So also part of that process is just the frustration of dealing with the tools and their limitations at the time. If we go to the lodge over here, this was the next one. I had much better tools. The lodge itself took about 1 month building it. And this was, I spent a bit more time on it. Although the planning phase for this was also a month. So I don't know, maybe that's also 2 months, but I was able to build this a lot faster and simulate it, prototype it out a little bit and kind of iterate over it a lot faster because I had better tools at the time. And then the cove here was also maybe about a month as well, but this one was a lot of concentrated effort. I was working on this almost every day. And I had excellent tools. We had the lighting update that happened as I was building this. And so I took advantage of it right then and there. And so it kind of scales with the improvements of our Maker Pen tool over time. Yeah, but it seems to be about a month and a half or so, off and on, depending on what my time schedule is like.
All right. Marco Diaz has a question. I can't get near him because his bubble's too large. Marco, I'm next to you.
Marco.
Right ahead.
Yep.
No, there you go.
There you go.
Let's pick that up. All right.
Okay.
It's not
Try
working.
dropping it and picking it up again because I can't hear you.
Yeah. Let's try dropping it. And pick it up again. Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, have you ever made an invention or are thinking of making one?
I mean, I've made several inventions, yes, but I haven't put any on the Rec Room store at all. I just haven't gotten around to it. That's all. Not like I'm like hoarding them or keeping them to myself. I do try to make video tutorials though about how to do things in circuitry and in building as well, in hopes that people will actually build the thing instead of just download the thing. But yeah.
All right, Dragon Rat Tiger. Up, drop it and pick it up. We can't hear you.
Yeah, try dropping and pick it up again.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
All right, cool.
So weird that
I like
works.
2 questions, but I'm going to try to fit into one.
Okay.
Of all like the social VR games, why'd you pick like Rec Room to make your stuff? How do you think like maybe VR chat?
That's also a very good question. So I picked Rec Room primarily because I really liked the art style of it initially. Rec Room was a lot more focused on like really nostalgic 1980s kind of like environments and aesthetic and low tech with like a little bit of like retro future stuffed into it as well. It resonated with me. I'm also a kid from the 80s as well, so it also helps me to it kind of aligns with me a bit better. VR chat is just chaos. It's just like crazy chaos. It's almost like jumping into 4chan in VR. It's like a weird dark path of VR that like I don't know. I don't want to say too much about it, but I have really mixed feelings about VR chat because I think it's a bit too unconstrained. If you can get my drift, it's like it's a bit too crazy and all these like people are just bringing in like random models. They're not optimizing the geometry. It lags out your game. No mic there's a lot to appreciate that Rec Room does for the comfort and the immersiveness of VR that I don't think VR does a very good job of, and I think Rec Room really makes you appreciate that, especially if you do jump between the two platforms a lot. And then also Rec Room in particular has a lot of building mechanics, and that resonates with me a lot because I also came from building crazy stuff with Redstone in Minecraft. So there's a lot of reasons why like Rec Room kind of speaks to me and why I've kind of stayed in Rec Room.
All right, we have another Twitch question here. Do you enjoy tackling these rooms solo, or would you prefer assistance and collaboration?
That's a good question. So, yeah, all my rooms are solo, with the exception of Magic K Academy, which was a team effort. I am a bit of an introverted person, and I have very strong opinions about how I think something should be done and how it should be approached. Part of my background as a UX designer, so that can sometimes make it difficult for me to work with other people unless I can really trust them and I respect their level of ability. So I tend to work by myself because I feel I can just move a lot faster. It's not that I'm adverse to working with a group, it's just that when you're working with a group, it kind of also demands a bit more of your time than what I have in my life currently. I have a full-time job, and I don't always have the time to dedicate to VR and like being there with people and communicating all the time. So it tends to be a lot faster for me to iterate and kind of go through my process solo. But I mean, to each their own. Like, there's some people that like just band together and they always just pump out really awesome rooms. Like, if you ever been to like some of the stuff from Wyatt, like his quest. What's that one called?
I'm not sure. I know the Lapse of Jumbotron was one that was
the Lapse of Jumbotron, but then there's also another one from Wyatt that was like it was like an Egyptian quest.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can't think of what it's called.
What was it? It was Mystery of World. Thank you. It was Mystery of World. Yeah. If I remember correctly, it's Wyatt and like one or two or three other people, and they're just like a group that just like make these really engaging experiences, and that really works out for them, probably because they either know each other very well or they really work well together. So, to each their own. But for me, I'm a bit more of a lone wolf, if you could say that.
All right. Well, I think we're about out of time here. We're well past the hour mark at this point for the event.
Okay.
We've had a lot of questions.
If you guys have any other questions, you can also just ping me on Discord. Same name in Discord as well. You can also message me in Rec Room. And if you can't message me, just friend me. I usually accept the friend invite really quickly. And then from there, you can also ask me the question. I'll usually respond to it within a little while. So yeah. Awesome. But anyway, thank you so much for everyone for showing up. Thank you everyone that's on the Twitch live stream. I really appreciate you guys watching from your PCs as well. But thanks for joining me, and I hope you got something out of this.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Tacos, for joining us, for giving us this amazing presentation and answering all these questions that everyone
Thanks for giving me an awesome stage to stand on. I really appreciate this.
I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. To everyone who attended, everyone who watched on the stream, today was the first two of what I'm hoping is going to be a long-running series of talks like this with other top creators in the game. So just keep an eye out for other events I'll be posting. I'll post them in the Discord. I'll post them on the Reddit, and I will, of course, they'll be in the events system. So hope to see you at the future events.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Oh, hey, drummer, do you want to like change the permission rules so we can like all hear each other again?
Yeah, I'm about to.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Turning the lights back on.
Ooh, lights are coming back on. So exciting.
It's all about having that